Hello there. The continuing high level of excess deaths in the UK is being met by a wall of silence from both the Westminster bubble and the mainstream press. These are real people passing away, and it's heart-wrenching to read some of the comments we've received here on past videos we've done on this and related matters. But it's like the vast majority of politicians and the whole of the media don't think that these people are important, that their lives just didn't matter. They all refuse to acknowledge the excess and refuse to question it or to demand something is done to prevent them, if possible. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe they can't prevent them. But we'll never know, because the system will not question the cause or causes. So with no questions, there will be no answers and no action. But in the week to the 28th of April, the latest ONS data, the number of people who passed away in the UK was 13,690, 12.9% above the rolling 5-year average. But in England and Wales, the number in private homes was nearly a quarter higher than normal, 23.3%. What is happening that more people are passing away in their own homes? Surely levels like these require an immediate investigation instead of a total clampdown on talking about them. Now suppose the opposition had thought these excesses were down to the cost of living crisis, with people starving to death because of Tory policies. Don't you think Keir Starmer would be all over it like a rash, touring the broadcasters with a vengeful air, icily declaring he would uproot Rishi Sunak and his Tory mob? Of course he would. Of that there's absolutely zero doubt. He would use it ruthlessly to his own political advantage, and it would be an open goal. But there must be a reason for them. So why aren't MPs queuing up to ask the Health Secretary Steve Barclay endless questions on it? And here's a big point that some people may not be factoring in. If it could be proved that these excesses were the fault of those people not taking the correct medical treatment to prevent it, and you know what I mean, don't you? If it could be proved that it was all down to those people who kept their sleeves firmly rolled down, then it would be wall-to-wall news 24 hours a day, just like it used to be. The Health Secretary would have science advisors and medical officers welded to his side as they toured the country conducting press conference after press conference. In fact, I think they'd do that even if there was just a tenuous connection between the two. And if it was all smoking and drinking related, I'm sure they'd let us know by slapping ever huger taxes on them. And people like Sadiq Khan are quite happy to attach numbers of deaths to air quality as a reason for his ULEZ expansion schemes. But no one is even acknowledging that this is happening right now. So there must be another cause. Mustn't there? One they want to brush under the carpet, maybe. So all we get is silence. An insult to those affected by this. And no one in authority wants to dig into these cases and ascertain the real truth. The press want access to politicians to earn a crust, and politicians know which side their bread is buttered on, and it's not on your side. They appear to be working for another master. Can there be any other explanation for this totally unquestioning groupthink amongst ministers and MPs? And the fact that all but one or maybe two of our MPs have somehow been cowed into a groupthink compliance with some diktat from somewhere should alarm us all. Our politicians are taking us in a direction that they do not want to tell the press or the people about. And the press, if they know or even have an inkling about the planned direction, are staying quiet to keep their access open to ministers. How can it be otherwise? The whole press agreeing to spike potentially one of the biggest stories out there all at the same time? Since when? And remember this, Keir Starmer is asking no searching questions about this major issue. So a Labour government will be as bad as the Tories, if not worse. I sometimes get the impression that the UK state believes they own us, lock, stock and barrel, every single one of us. Anyway, I'm off to join the victims of this, the Truth Be Told rally at Trafalgar Square tomorrow afternoon. We will drive net migration down to the tens of thousands, the Tories endlessly told us. Well, the Tories do not want to do that. They obviously want it in the many hundreds of thousands. Because they set a record of 504,000 last year, and we are now being warned that it will be somewhere between 650,000 and 1 million this year. Now that's the net figure. Far more than that will be coming in before we subtract those leaving the country to get to that net number. So if the net figure is as high as 1 million, then the number of people entering could be as high as 1.3 to 1.4 million. That's in the region of 2% of our current population number in 1 year. And we wonder why our infrastructure is creaking at the seams, why doctors and dentist appointments seem so scarce. Well, NHS ones anyway. And I also wonder why our GDP is so stagnant and not zooming up the charts with all these new workers within our economy. But the government and corporates will blame that on lazy stay-at-home Brits, won't they? And have we updated electricity available to the grid to power all the appliances these newcomers will need to use? And then there's the housing question. The average occupancy in the UK is 2.4 people per dwelling. That means we needed to find an extra 270,000 up to 416,000 homes for all of them. Now those homes must be there, or else where are they living right now? Is this why we're forever building homes, but our youngsters can't afford to buy one? And now along comes Keir Starmer to claim that Rishi Sunak has completely lost the plot on immigration. Well, either that or it's a plan. Starmer said, we need a managed approach and we haven't got that. But judging by past Labour pronouncements of, we'll rub their noses in diversity, all I predict from Labour will be the management of a much, much higher inflow number when they get into power, along with a V8 motorised rubber stamp fast-track approval for any outstanding rubber boat or back of lorry cases. Now the net figures will be released later this month on the 25th of May, and one assumes this pre-release info is intended to take the sting out of it on the day. That's how they manage we the people, while they pursue policies the people don't want them to pursue. Richard.
I have had enough of being gaslit by the government over these above 5-year average departures of our friends and family. You know what I speak of. And like many of you, I have no faith left in the government. And in fact, I have virtually no faith left in the electoral system at all. I am glad that Reclaim are catching the imagination of the people. But I am not pinning my hopes on this rigged system. But I wish them well, as I wish the Heritage Party and a few others well. Some good people out there, there really are, but the establishment is never going to let them win when they enter into a game designed by the establishment. So yeah, I have had enough. And last night I popped to the pub to get away from my thoughts. And as I entered the pub, I was greeted by GB News on the TV there. And there was National Treasure Jeremy Hunt trying to reassure the masses that everything will come good in the end, in the wake of the interest rate hike. Yeah. It was like a snake trying to lick the wounds off an animal it had just bitten. And then, up next, was Jacob Rees-Mogg looking like a semi with brewer's droop as he sat there slouched on the sofa whilst dissecting the state of play of the economy. And God forgive me, but I felt nothing but contempt for him. He pompously framed our society, which he has gained disproportionate wealth from, as if it was a system, a society worth preserving, and serves everyone equally. His perfumed utterances were nothing more than hollow vanity speculations and, quite frankly, meaningless conjecture on the subject of an authoritarian regime. But I felt insulted by this because it was coming from a man who will never feel the pinch and the cold sting of poverty. Who thought that bringing Jacob Rees-Mogg in as a presenter on GB News was a good idea? Did somebody actually think he is a representative of the people and relatable to the people on the so-called People's Channel? No, Jacob is an MP who served in a government that locked us away, us the people, and then poisoned us, telling us it was good for us and would protect others. Yeah. That's the context you need to hold when watching him on GB News. Did Rees-Mogg stand up and support Andrew Bridgen? No. But he was praising the rollout thing. I can't remember what that was about. No. In fact, I won't talk about it, even I could remember what it was about. GB News has puzzled me for a while, okay? It claims to not be part of the establishment, yet it offers its prime time viewing to a presenter who is very much at the heart of the establishment. Indeed, there are some inspirational presenters on the channel, like Neil Oliver and Lawrence Fox, to name but a few, and there are a few others, but there was a stain on that channel since Mark Stein's alleged constructive dismissal, only to be replaced by an overprivileged rich Tory. People are struggling, and I mean struggling. The last thing they need to hear is the witterings of a man who isn't struggling and lives in an ivory tower. A privileged man going over the mechanics of struggle of the poorest in this country is not what the poorest of this country want to hear. You need to learn and understand this one thing, and that is the media are the mouthpieces of evil. Evil people that imprisoned us and poisoned us and have held us in servitude for generations. Yes, generations. We've had a sort of veneer of a democracy, a sort of an illusion of democracy. But no, the media are owned by the same people that gave the poison to us. With that in mind, look back at the past 3 years and ask yourself if you were truly informed and made I would call it an informed decision when offered the poison. I don't care if I'm sounding like a stuck record. The news and those that deliver it need to be framed correctly in our minds each day. Otherwise, we might get sucked back into believing some of that rubbish. I will not trust those that told me something was safe when it wasn't. We are a people living in a state of fear. Fear of the supranational corporations and financial institutions that the state allows to exploit us. And we live in fear of the state itself. Yes, they try and keep us cowered down. We are left lurching from one disaster and fearmonger story to another, scurrying around with little to no security. They, and I mean they, the elusive they, are backing us into a corner. And there is nothing more dangerous than an animal when it is cornered. You see, there is no moral obligation left to contribute to this society. The society that Jacob Rees-Mogg seems so keen to dissect the mechanics thereof and sustain. In fact, I would say that contributing towards and helping sustain this society is immoral. But then again, I am a libertarian who believes in a small state because, like many of you, I just want to be left alone and believed in community and not the state. Community, get that into your minds. Community, not state. We should be walking away from the tyrannical grip of His Majesty's government and judiciary and forming our own communities. All we need is our own medium of exchange, and let's go back to the land and say goodbye to this artificial society and leave it behind us and reverse the damage done by the Enclosures Acts. Just walk to the land. Leave the notion of being left-wing or right-wing in the past. If you identify as either of those, then you are dwelling in the past. And in yesteryear's identity politics, that was the main thing. Yes, oh, I'm left-wing, I'm right-wing. Walk away from it. Walk to the land. If you believe in the free market, then you have to believe in freedom itself. And don't let your perception of the free market be tethered to something propped up by the state. No institution should be too big to fail and too big to fall. And no state should say how you live your life. Your community should be the extent of your state, where the reach of your pitchfork defines the parameters of democratic accountability. Our large towns and cities are not and never have been designed for our benefit. They were there, the places where people were herded into when driven off the land by the aristocracy and gentry many years ago. That's why cities exist in these large towns. Places where humans became, well, little more than cattle to serve new masters. Masters who offered work in dark satanic mills, and centres of commerce where community turned into vicious tribalism eventually, and finally the masses submitted to consumerism, and the me generation was born, bathed in all the trappings of the material world. We need to return to the land and to nurture it, for when looked after, it provides all we need. Forget the 15-minute neighbourhoods and forget your commute to your meaningless job. You need an acre of land, a shovel, and good neighbours to drink cider with in the summer nights, and to feast with. Feast upon food that you have grown or reared, and sit by a fire, playing guitars and singing, gazing up at the night sky together, instead of living in some impersonal city pod, gazing at your iPhone, dreaming of sitting in a field by a fire, singing and playing guitars. Many people think they can't live without the trappings and luxuries of modern living. But there is no greater luxury than living close to the land. We need to walk away from the cities and this evil-controlled society and onto the land from whence we came. The society that Jacob Rees-Mogg would dissect, protect and sustain is one that sustains him and his lifestyle and provides him with wealth. So ignore him and ignore the monarchy that legitimizes people like Jacob Rees-Mogg in His Majesty's Parliament. If they send the troops into the fields after us, then that is a hill that is worthy to die on, and our blood will cry out from the soil. Creation is groaning, and not because of the nonsense that is climate change. Creation is waiting for us. Our Father is waiting for us. Anyway, what do you lot think about what has been discussed today? Leave your creamy pearls of wisdom in the comment section below, and we will see you again tomorrow at 5:45, 5:45, 5:45.